You think the 1970s budget recipes was just mac and cheese and hamburger? Think again. These recession-era kitchens served up some of the most ingenious, penny-pinching, and surprisingly satisfying meals in American history. While the economy struggled through oil shocks and stagflation, American home cooks transformed cheap staples into comfort food that kept families fed on $5 a day. Let's dig into 25 budget recipes from the 1970s you never knew were actually survival cuisine dressed up as dinner. Mac and cheese. Before artisanal mac and cheese became a $20 restaurant dish, there was the blue box savior. In the mid-1970s, when beef prices skyrocketed and families were stretching every grocery dollar, Kraft's boxed macaroni and cheese exploded from 19 cents a box into America's most reliable dinner. You'd boil those elbow noodles until the kitchen filled with starchy steam. Drain them in a metal colander, then stir in margarine, milk, and that foil packet of nuclear orange cheese powder. Every noodle wore its fluorescent coating, hitting your mouth with creamy, salty, artificially sharp cheddar flavor that somehow tasted exactly like childhood security. This wasn't just cheap food, it was democratic comfort. Rich kids and poor kids ate the same blue box. It showed up at potlucks, got doctored with tuna or hot dogs, and became the dish that said, "We're making it work," without saying anything at all. If you're enjoying this journey through food history, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss future videos. Mock apple pie. No dish captures 1970s desperation innovation like mock apple pie. When apples cost too much during the 1973 to 74 recession, Nabisco promoted a Depression-era recipe that used Ritz crackers instead of fruit. Yes, crackers. You'd soak buttery Ritz crackers in a sugary lemon syrup spiked with cinnamon, pile them into a pie crust, and bake until golden. The crackers absorbed the liquid and softened into something that mimicked apple texture with eerie accuracy. Your teeth bit through flaky crust into tender, sweet filling that tasted like, well, like sweetened crackers pretending to be apples. But here's the thing, it worked. Blind taste tests fooled neighbors at church potlucks. The pie cost 1/3 the price of real apple pie and used shelf-stable ingredients that never spoiled. It became the ultimate symbol of making do, transforming processed crackers into dessert through sheer chemical wizardry and economic necessity. Classic chili and cornbread. When meat got expensive, chili became the great extender. A single pound of ground beef could feed 6 people if you bulked it up with enough kidney beans, tomatoes, and cornbread on the side. In 1970s kitchens, chili simmered for hours in massive pots, filling the house with smoky, peppery aroma that promised warmth and fullness. You'd brown the cheapest ground beef you could find, drain off the fat to reuse later, then add canned tomatoes, kidney beans, chili powder, cumin, and whatever vegetables needed using up. It bubbled on the stove while kids did homework, thickening into a hearty stew with meat specks scattered throughout like treasure. The cornbread came from Jiffy Mix, another 19-cent savior, mixed with an egg and milk, baked until golden with crispy edges. Together they created the perfect stomach filler: protein, carbs, fiber, and enough flavor to make you forget you were eating poverty food. Leftovers improved overnight, and the whole meal cost under $3. Hamburger Stew. Hamburger stew was what happened when pot roast became a fantasy. You'd take that same cheap ground beef, brown it with onions, then throw in every root vegetable from the crisper drawer: potatoes, carrots, celery, maybe some frozen peas if you felt fancy. Add a can of tomato soup for body, some beef bouillon for flavor, and water to stretch it all into soup. It simmered until the vegetables went soft and the broth turned rich and beefy, even though there was maybe half a pound of meat in the whole pot. The result hit your spoon thick and chunky, steaming hot with that homey smell of cooked onions and beef fat. Each bowl delivered soft potato chunks, sweet carrots, and little crumbles of seasoned hamburger that made you feel like you'd eaten something substantial. It wasn't elegant, but it was honest food that used every cheap ingredient available and turned them into comfort that stuck to your ribs all afternoon. Tuna noodle casserole. Nothing says 1970s thrift like tuna noodle casserole, the dish that turned one can of fish into dinner for four. This was church basement food, funeral reception food, Tuesday night food when payday was still 3 days away. You'd boil egg noodles, mix them with a can of tuna, cream of mushroom soup straight from the can, frozen peas, and maybe some diced celery for crunch. The whole mixture went into a buttered casserole dish, got topped with crushed potato chips or breadcrumbs, then baked until the top turned golden and crispy. The kitchen filled with that distinctive smell of baked fish and processed soup, somehow comforting despite its humble origins. Each forkful delivered creamy, salty, vaguely fishy flavor with pops of sweet peas and crunchy topping. The mushroom soup acted as sauce, stretching that single can of tuna across multiple servings. It represented pure efficiency, shelf-stable protein, carbs, vegetables, and crunch in one economical pan. Hobo Stew. Hobo Stew earned its name from Depression-era train hoppers, but it roared back to life in 1970s kitchens when budgets got tight. This was everything but the kitchen sink cooking. Ground beef, potatoes, carrots, onions, canned corn, canned green beans, tomato sauce, all thrown into one massive pot with whatever seasonings you had on hand. No precise measurements, no fancy techniques, just dump and stir. It bubbled away for an hour or more, filling the house with that generic something's cooking smell that made kids hungry before they even knew what was for dinner. The stew came out thick and reddish-brown, with soft vegetables and little nuggets of ground beef distributed throughout like a treasure hunt. Every spoonful tasted different depending on what you scooped up, but it all went down warm and filling. This was pure survival cooking dressed up with a romantic name, feeding entire families on less than $2 while using up every random can lurking in the back of the cupboard. Fried green tomatoes. When your garden gave you more tomatoes than you could eat before frost hit, fried green tomatoes turned waste into a meal. Southern families had been making these for generations, but the practice spread nationwide during the 1970s as vegetable gardening exploded among budget-conscious households. You'd slice those hard, unripe tomatoes thick, dredge them in cornmeal mixed with salt and pepper, then fry them in hot oil until the coating turned crispy and golden. The tomatoes stayed firm inside their crunchy shell, tart and tangy against the savory, crispy crust. Each bite cracked between your teeth before releasing that sharp, acidic tomato flavor that woke up your whole mouth. They were simultaneously crispy and juicy, rich from frying, but bright from the unripe fruit. Families ate them as a side dish, a snack, or even the main event when meat wasn't in the budget. They represented resourcefulness, turning something normally thrown away or left to rot into legitimate food that people actually craved. Meatloaf with ketchup glaze. Meatloaf became the ultimate meat stretcher when hamburger was the only affordable protein. 1.5 pounds of ground beef could feed 6 people if you mixed in enough breadcrumbs, oatmeal, eggs, and diced onions. The mixture got shaped into a loaf, slathered with ketchup, and baked until the outside formed a slightly crispy, sweet, tangy crust, while the inside stayed moist and savory. That ketchup glaze caramelized in the oven, turning sticky and concentrated, providing most of the flavor punch. You'd slice it thick at the table, each piece holding together just barely, the cross-section showing flecks of onion and herbs throughout the meat matrix. It tasted like seasoned hamburger condensed into solid form, with the ketchup providing sweetness and acidity. Leftovers made even better sandwiches the next day. Cold meatloaf between white bread with more ketchup and maybe some iceberg lettuce. The whole meal cost under $2 and stretched that precious beef across multiple meals through sheer ingenuity and filler. Bean and bacon soup. When you needed something hot and filling but only had pocket change, bean and bacon soup delivered maximum satisfaction for minimum cost. A handful of bacon ends, the cheap scraps butchers sold for next to nothing, got fried until they released their fat and turned crispy. Into that rendered fat went onions, carrots, dried navy beans that had soaked overnight, and water to cover everything. The pot simmered for hours, the beans gradually softening while absorbing smoky bacon flavor and releasing their starch to thicken the broth. By dinner time, you had a thick, creamy soup studded with tender beans, soft vegetables, and those precious bacon bits providing salty, meaty flavor throughout. Each spoonful coated your tongue with rich, pork-flavored creaminess, punctuated by whole beans that exploded softly in your mouth. Lentil soup. Lentils became the hippie protein of the 1970s, but budget-conscious traditional families discovered them too when meat prices skyrocketed. These tiny legumes cost almost nothing, cooked faster than beans, and provided protein without the premium price tag. A basic lentil soup started with sautéed onions, carrots, and celery, the holy trinity of cheap cooking. Then added dried brown lentils, canned tomatoes, bay leaves, and water. It simmered until the lentils softened into tender nuggets that wanted to fall apart, creating a thick, almost porridge-like consistency. The flavor landed somewhere between earthy and hearty, with the tomatoes providing acidity and the vegetables adding sweetness. Each bowl came out rusty brown and steaming, substantial enough to feel like a real meal despite containing zero meat. Families served it with crusty bread for dipping, and the combination filled stomachs for pennies. Vegetarians praised it, but regular families just appreciated how far a single bag of lentils stretched when payday was still days away. Hamburger gravy on bread. This dish had no pretensions. It was exactly what the name promised, and it fed families when the cupboard got bare. You'd brown a half-pound of ground beef in a skillet, leaving it crumbly and loose. Then sprinkle flour over it to make a roux. Milk went in next, stirred constantly until it thickened into a pale brown gravy studded with meat pieces. Salt, pepper, maybe some garlic powder if you had it, and that was dinner. You ladled this creamy, beefy mixture over slices of white bread that soaked up the gravy like a sponge, turning soft and heavy on your plate. The taste was simple. Milk gravy with meat, basically biscuits and gravy's poor cousin made with sandwich bread. But it was hot, filling, and protein-rich enough to carry kids through to morning. The whole meal cost under $1 and used ingredients that never went bad. It wasn't pretty, but it kept people fed when nothing else would stretch far enough. Ham and bean soup. Ham and bean soup turned Sunday's ham bone into Thursday's dinner. After a holiday or special occasion where you'd splurged on a ham, that bone with its clinging scraps of meat became the foundation for days of meals. You'd throw it into a pot with dried white beans, onions, carrots, celery, and water. Then simmer it for hours until the beans softened and the remaining ham fell off the bone in tender shreds. The marrow and collagen leached out, making the broth rich and slightly gelatinous, coating your mouth with savory satisfaction. By the time you served it, the soup was thick with creamy beans, studded with ham pieces, and full of that deep, salty, smoky flavor that only real ham bone provides. Each spoonful delivered comfort and substance, proving that nothing got wasted in a thrifty 1970s kitchen. That ham bone, which many would throw away, became the gift that kept giving across multiple meals, feeding a family for the cost of some dried beans. Watergate Salad. Watergate Salad appeared at every 1970s potluck, named after the scandal that defined the era. This wasn't salad in any traditional sense. It was instant pistachio pudding mixed with canned pineapple, mini marshmallows, whipped topping, and chopped pecans if you felt fancy. The resulting mixture came out pale green and fluffy, sweet and creamy with unexpected chunks of pineapple and the occasional crunch of nut. It tasted like dessert masquerading as a side dish, which is exactly what it was. The pistachio pudding provided that distinctive artificial flavor and pastel color that screamed 1970s processed food, while the marshmallows added chewiness and the pineapple contributed acidic sweetness. You'd serve it in a glass bowl to show off that characteristic green color, and people would either love it or be utterly baffled by its existence. It cost almost nothing to make, since everything came from boxes and cans, and it lasted for days in the refrigerator. Was it actually salad? No. Did anyone care? Also, no. Beef stroganoff. Budget beef stroganoff in the 1970s bore little resemblance to the Russian original. You'd take cheap stew meat or even ground beef, brown it with onions and mushrooms, canned if fresh cost too much, then create a sauce from cream of mushroom soup mixed with sour cream. The whole thing got poured over egg noodles and served like you'd made something fancy. The taste was creamy, vaguely beefy, with that distinctive processed mushroom soup flavor that defined an entire generation of American cooking. The sour cream added tanginess, cutting through the richness just enough to make you want another bite. Each forkful combined soft noodles, tender meat pieces, and that smooth beige sauce that coated everything evenly. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. No combination captured rainy afternoon comfort like grilled cheese and tomato soup. This wasn't gourmet. It was white bread, American cheese slices, margarine, and Campbell's condensed tomato soup made with milk, not water, because you weren't poor, just thrifty. You'd butter the bread, lay down 2 cheese slices, butter the other side, and fry it in a skillet until both sides turned golden and crispy, while the cheese melted into gooey submission. The sandwich came off the griddle crackling, the cheese stretching in long strings when you pulled the halves apart. The soup simmered on the stove, turning that concentrated tomato paste into smooth, sweet, vaguely acidic liquid that tasted more like childhood than actual tomatoes. Together, they created perfect symbiosis. You dipped the crispy sandwich into the hot soup, the bread soaking up liquid while the cheese stayed molten. Each bite delivered crunchy, creamy, hot, tangy satisfaction that cost less than 50 cents and made kids feel loved on the coldest days. Liver and onions. Liver and onions was the dish kids dreaded, but parents swore by, because liver cost almost nothing and contained more iron than anything else at the butcher counter. Beef liver came in thin, dark purple slices that turned gray-brown when cooked, with a texture somewhere between tender and slightly grainy. You dredge them in flour, fry them quickly in butter with sliced onions, and serve them up while insisting they were good for you. The taste was intensely metallic, earthy, and organy. There was no hiding what you were eating. That distinctive mineral flavor coated your mouth and lingered long after dinner ended. The onions helped, their sweetness cutting through liver's intensity, but nothing could make liver taste like anything other than liver. Adults who grew up poor often loved it because it represented rare meat during hard times. Kids gagged through it, trying to swallow without chewing. It cost pennies per pound and provided more nutrients than steak, which made it depression food that survived into the 1970s on pure economic logic, even when taste argued otherwise. Wacky Cake. Wacky Cake earned its name because it contained no eggs, no butter, and no milk. Nothing that could spoil or cost much money. This Depression-era recipe surged back during the 1970s inflation, when eggs hit 70 cents a dozen. You'd mix flour, sugar, cocoa, baking soda, salt, vegetable oil, vinegar, vanilla, and water directly in the baking pan, creating a crater method where dry ingredients got mixed first, then wet ingredients filled holes poked in the top. After baking, it emerged as a dark, moist chocolate cake that tasted surprisingly legitimate despite its bizarre method. The vinegar reacted with baking soda to provide lift, since no eggs were there to do the job. The texture was tender and springy, the chocolate flavor deep and satisfying. You'd frost it with simple chocolate icing made from cocoa, powdered sugar, and water. Again, no butter. The whole cake cost under $1 and fed 8 people, proving you didn't need expensive ingredients to make dessert. It became potluck staple and kids' birthday cake, entirely acceptable despite its poverty origins. Ham salad sandwiches. Ham salad turned leftover holiday ham into a week of lunches. You'd grind or finely chop the remaining ham, mix it with mayonnaise, sweet pickle relish, and maybe some mustard, creating a spreadable mixture that looked vaguely pink and smelled tangy sweet. Spread thick between 2 slices of white bread, it made a sandwich that was simultaneously familiar and slightly off-putting if you thought too hard about its texture. The taste combined salty ham, sweet pickles, and creamy mayo in each bite, with little chunks of meat providing texture. It wasn't pretty. The mixture looked suspiciously like cat food, but it was economical and used every scrap of expensive meat. Kids ate it without question at school lunchtime, trading it sometimes for peanut butter and jelly if they could find someone willing. Adults made it because wasting food was unconscionable when money was tight. That single holiday ham bone and meat scraps extended into sandwiches, soup, and casseroles for over a week, making ham salad just one stop on the leftover utilization train. Stuffed bell peppers. Stuffed bell peppers stretched ground beef through vegetable engineering. You'd cut the tops off green peppers, scoop out seeds, and fill each cavity with a mixture of browned ground beef, cooked rice, tomato sauce, onions, and seasonings. The peppers got arranged in a baking dish with a little water, then baked until the pepper walls softened and the filling heated through. They emerged from the oven collapsed slightly, the pepper tasting sweet and soft around that savory, tomatoey filling. Each pepper was a self-contained meal, vegetable, protein, and grain, all in one package. A single pound of ground beef could stuff 6 large peppers if you used enough rice, feeding a family from one batch. The presentation looked almost fancy, like you'd tried harder than usual, even though the dish was pure economy. You ate them with a knife and fork, cutting through the tender pepper wall to release that steaming filling, mixing everything together on your plate. They proved that poverty cooking could still have visual appeal and portion control. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. The humble PB&J wasn't just kids' lunch. It was legitimate dinner when the grocery money ran out before payday arrived. 2 slices of white bread, cheap peanut butter spread thick on one side, grape jelly or strawberry jam on the other, pressed together to make the most economical, complete protein meal in America. The peanut butter stuck to the roof of your mouth, creamy and salty, while the jelly provided sweetness and just enough moisture to wash everything down. Together, they created that familiar flavor combination that every American kid could recognize blindfolded. A jar of peanut butter and a jar of jelly could produce dozens of sandwiches, making the per-meal cost almost negligible. Adults ate them without shame when money got tight because they were filling, nostalgic, and required zero cooking skill or energy. They appeared in lunchboxes, on dinner plates, and as midnight snacks. The meal was utterly classless. Rich kids and poor kids ate identical PB&Js, unified by processed food democracy and American food culture standardization. Baked ziti with tomato sauce. Baked ziti became the Italian-American answer to tuna noodle casserole. Cheap, filling, and suitable for feeding crowds. You'd boil ziti pasta, mix it with jarred tomato sauce and maybe some ricotta or cottage cheese if you had it. Layer it in a baking dish with mozzarella on top. Then bake until the cheese melted and turned golden. The result was comfort food that seemed more sophisticated than hamburger casserole because it had an Italian name. Each forkful delivered tender pasta tubes filled with tangy tomato sauce, creamy cheese melting throughout, and that slightly crispy cheese top providing texture. The tomato sauce was sweet and acidic, the cheese added richness, and the pasta provided substance. It was filling enough to be a complete meal without any meat, which made it economical during beef shortages. The whole pan cost under $3 and fed 6 people, with leftovers that reheated perfectly for lunch. It showed up at potlucks, family dinners, and weeknight tables across America, proving that Italian-inspired food could be just as thrifty as any other poverty cuisine. Porcupine meatballs. These whimsical meatballs earned their name from the way uncooked rice mixed into the meat mixture absorbed liquid during cooking, then poked out like little quills. Porcupine meatballs combined ground beef, uncooked rice, eggs, and seasonings, then simmered them in tomato sauce until the rice was tender. The genius was in the rice serving dual purposes, as both a filler to stretch expensive ground beef and as the starch component of the meal. The tomato sauce became infused with the flavors of the meat as it cooked, creating a rich, satisfying gravy, perfect for spooning over the finished dish. Moms appreciated that this one-pot meal required minimal cleanup and could simmer unattended while they helped kids with homework. Regional variations included adding green peppers to the sauce or incorporating oatmeal alongside the rice in the meat mixture. Some families served them with a dollop of sour cream on top. This economical filling meal represented the creative problem-solving of 70s home cooks who needed to feed hungry families on tight budgets while still making dinner feel special. Tuna twist casserole, the ultimate 70s weeknight dinner solution, graced millions of American tables with its creamy, satisfying presence. Tuna twist casserole combined canned tuna, spiral pasta, cream of mushroom soup, and a crispy potato chip topping that created the perfect textural balance. Moms across the country loved how affordable and filling it was, while kids couldn't resist the crunchy, salty topping. The genius touch that made this version special was the addition of frozen peas and diced pimentos, adding bright pops of color to the creamy base. Many families personalized their version with additions like diced celery for crunch or a dash of hot sauce for kick. The casserole represented everything great about 70s cooking: convenience, creativity, and comfort all in one dish. This retro classic could feed a family of 6 for just a few dollars, making it the MVP of budget-friendly meals that still managed to feel special. Waikiki meatballs. The tiki craze of the 60s extended its influence into 70s home cooking with dishes like Waikiki meatballs. These saucy spheres combined ground beef with crushed saltine crackers, eggs, and minced onions, formed into meatballs and browned, before being simmered in a sweet-sour sauce starring pineapple chunks, green bell pepper, and brown sugar. The exotic-sounding dish gave suburban families a taste of tropical flavors without leaving home. The vibrant sauce, often thickened with cornstarch to a glossy finish, created a gravy that paired perfectly with white rice. Some versions included maraschino cherries for extra color and sweetness. The dish perfectly captured the 70s fascination with Polynesian-inspired cuisine that had been popularized by restaurants like Trader Vic's. Home cooks appreciated that the dish could be prepared ahead and reheated, making it perfect for busy weeknights or weekend dinner parties. The combination of familiar meatballs with exotic sauce ingredients represented how American cuisine was expanding its flavor profiles during this decade, incorporating international influences while maintaining familiar formats. Deviled ham logs. The cocktail party circuit of the 70s wouldn't have been complete without deviled ham logs making an appearance on at least one glass serving tray. These savory cylindrical appetizers combined canned deviled ham, cream cheese, and seasonings into a mixture that was shaped into logs and rolled in chopped nuts, herbs, or crushed potato chips. The logs were then chilled until firm and sliced to reveal perfect rounds with a crunchy exterior and creamy interior. They paired perfectly with the era's popular cocktails like Harvey Wallbangers and Tequila Sunrises. Hostesses loved that the logs could be made days ahead and kept ready in the refrigerator for unexpected guests. The combination of smoky ham flavor with rich cream cheese created an addictive umami taste that kept party guests coming back for just one more. Some creative variations included adding crushed pineapple for sweetness or horseradish for extra kick. These perfectly portioned bites represented the 70s obsession with convenient entertaining that still managed to look elegant. Tomato aspic with veg all. Perhaps no dish screams 70s dinner party louder than tomato aspic with veg all. This wobbly, savory gelatin mold combined tomato juice, unflavored gelatin, and canned mixed vegetables into a molded salad that graced countless buffet tables. The bright red aspic was unmolded onto lettuce leaves and sometimes garnished with a dollop of mayonnaise, creating a striking presentation that homemakers took pride in. The tomato flavor was often enhanced with lemon juice, Worcestershire sauce, and a dash of hot sauce, giving it a complex Bloody Mary-like taste that adults appreciated. Canned veg all provided convenience and colorful vegetable pieces suspended throughout the clear red jelly. Some variations included adding chopped celery for extra crunch or horseradish for kick. The aspic represented the 70s fascination with gelatin in all forms, from desserts to savory salads. While modern diners might hesitate at the concept of vegetables suspended in jelly, many who grew up with this dish remember it fondly for its refreshing tanginess and visual impact. Ham and banana hollandaise. One of the decade's more unusual creations, ham and banana hollandaise represented the experimental spirit of 70s cooking. This eyebrow-raising dish featured ripe bananas wrapped in ham slices, baked with a drizzle of mustard lemon juice, and topped with a quick hollandaise sauce made from egg yolks, butter, and lemon juice. The sweet-savory combination appeared in several women's magazines of the era, presented as an elegant luncheon option for adventurous hostesses. The contrast between the warm, soft banana and the salty ham created a flavor experience unlike anything in modern cuisine. The dish was often garnished with parsley and paprika for color and served with rice pilaf on the side. While it may sound bizarre to modern palates, the combination reflected the 70s fascination with Hawaiian-inspired dishes that paired meat with tropical fruits. Home economists of the era promoted such recipes as ways for homemakers to demonstrate culinary creativity while using convenient ingredients. Despite its short-lived popularity, ham and banana hollandaise represents a fearless approach to flavor combinations that defined the experimental food culture of the decade. Jello 1, 2, 3. Dessert innovation reached new heights when General Foods introduced Jello 1, 2, 3, a powder that magically separated into 3 distinct layers as it set. A clear jelly on the bottom, a mousse-like middle, and a light foam on top. This tri-level treat captivated families with its science experiment-like transformation from a single mixture into a visually striking layered dessert. Available in strawberry, orange, and raspberry flavors, the dessert was often served in clear glass parfait cups to showcase the dramatic separation. Kids were mesmerized by the distinct layers, while moms appreciated the no-bake simplicity that still created a wow factor at the dinner table. Although the product was discontinued in the 1990s, dedicated fans have created homemade versions that replicate the triple layer effect using standard Jello and additional ingredients. Jello 1, 2, 3 represented the space-age fascination with convenience foods that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Its popularity demonstrated America's 70s obsession with gelatin-based desserts and no-bake treats that minimized kitchen time while maximizing visual impact. Cheese fondue. The ultimate 70s social dining experience, cheese fondue brought family and friends together around a communal pot of melted Swiss and Gruyere cheeses. This interactive meal became the centerpiece of countless dinner parties after Americans discovered the Swiss tradition. The pot of bubbling cheese was seasoned with garlic, white wine, and Kirsch liqueur, creating a luxurious dipping sauce for cubes of crusty bread. The communal aspect made dinner time an event rather than just a meal. Special long-handled fondue forks with colored tips helped diners keep track of their bread cubes as they dipped into the shared pot. Party tradition held that if someone dropped their bread into the cheese, they owed the table a kiss or had to buy the next round of drinks. Beyond the basic recipe, adventurous hosts offered additional dippers like boiled potato cubes, apple slices, or even cubed ham. The popularity of cheese fondue spawned countless fondue cookbooks and led to chocolate and oil fondue variations. The dish represented the 70s emphasis on casual entertaining that encouraged conversation and connection. Hamburger boats. Dinner became an adventure with hamburger boats, turning ordinary ground beef into a playful meal that delighted kids and adults alike. Hollowed-out hamburger bun boats were toasted until golden, then filled with a savory mixture of browned ground beef, diced onions, and the all-important canned tomato soup that gave the filling its signature flavor. The boats were topped with melted American cheese slices that created a gooey treasure under which the flavorful meat mixture waited. Moms often snuck chopped vegetables like bell peppers into the filling, making it a complete meal disguised as a fun food experience. The genius of hamburger boats was in their customization. Each family member could dress their boat with different toppings, like sliced olives, pickle chips, or crushed potato chips. This affordable meal stretched a pound of ground beef to feed a family of 4, providing a welcome break from standard hamburgers while using many of the same ingredients families already had on hand. Beef stroganoff with hamburger. This Americanized version of the classic Russian dish became a weeknight staple by substituting ground beef for the traditional expensive beef tenderloin strips. Beef stroganoff with hamburger combined browned ground beef with sliced mushrooms and onions in a creamy sauce, enriched with sour cream and sometimes cream of mushroom soup. Served over egg noodles, it provided a quick route to an elegant-sounding dinner that satisfied hungry families. The dish appeared frequently in women's magazines and community cookbooks as a budget-friendly meal with international flair. Some variations included adding a splash of cooking sherry or a dollop of ketchup to enhance the flavor profile. Busy moms appreciated that the dish could be prepared in a single skillet, except for the noodles, and required ingredients commonly found in 70s pantries and refrigerators. The creamy, savory flavor appealed to children and adults alike, making it a rare, no complaints family dinner. This adaptation represented the American knack for making international cuisines more accessible through simplification and substitution of ingredients, a hallmark of 70s fusion cooking. Crepes Suzette. This flambéed French dessert epitomized sophisticated 70s entertaining, bringing tableside theatrics into home dining rooms. Crepes Suzette featured delicate thin pancakes bathed in a sauce of caramelized sugar, butter, orange juice, and zest, then dramatically flamed with Grand Marnier or Cointreau. The preparation was as much performance as cooking, with hosts proudly demonstrating their culinary prowess by safely controlling the impressive flames. Julia Child and other TV chefs had popularized French cooking techniques, inspiring home cooks to attempt dishes previously found only in high-end restaurants. The combination of delicate crepes, rich buttery sauce, and bright citrus flavors created a memorable dessert experience. Some home cooks simplified the recipe by preparing the crepes ahead of time and only flaming the sauce at the table. The dramatic presentation made this dessert perfect for special occasions and dinner parties where hosts wanted to create a memorable finale. Crepes Suzette represented the 70s enthusiasm for international cuisine and theatrical food presentation, a time when the joy of cooking was found not just in flavor, but in the entire sensory experience surrounding a dish.